Welcome to the House of Financial Masochism.
Let us be honest for a second. The dream of getting rich quickly is the most expensive addiction humanity has ever created. Forget drugs, forget casinos, forget luxury brands. The real high comes from watching a trading account inflate overnight, whispering to yourself, "I am a genius." And of course, the fastest way to get that high is leverage the financial equivalent of strapping a rocket to your bicycle and insisting you will stick the landing. But here's the ugly truth. Leverage is not a rocket, it is a bomb. And history is littered with the remains of visionaries who confused borrowed money with brilliance. They promised themselves champagne and ended up drinking tap water through a straw in bankruptcy court. This is not finance, it is theater. Every investor who flirts with leverage eventually discovers that they are not the main character. They are the clown.
From genius to bankruptcy. How leverage turns paper millionaires into real-life cautionary tales.
There is something magical about leverage. It is the financial equivalent of steroids, cocaine, and an energy drink all rolled into one. Take a little money, sprinkle in some borrowed cash, and suddenly you feel like Gordon Gekko reincarnated. Who needs patience, discipline, or boring compounding when you can multiply your returns with a single click? That is the sales pitch. What you never see in the commercial is the part where your portfolio catches fire. Your broker calls at 3 a.m. and you end up explaining to your family why the vacation fund now belongs to the margin desk. Leverage is seductive because it flatters your ego. It whispers, "You are smarter than the average investor." You do not need to wait 10 years to get rich. You can do it by Friday. And of course, everyone believes it because nobody likes being average. The problem is that leverage is less like a financial strategy and more like a loaded gun left on the coffee table. It looks impressive, it makes you feel powerful, and eventually, it goes off in your face. History is littered with these cautionary tales. You can open a financial newspaper at any random point in the last 100 years and find some self-proclaimed genius who used leverage to turn himself into a millionaire, only to then immolate his fortune in record time. The cycle is almost comforting in its predictability. Inflated ego, massive bet, temporary glory, catastrophic collapse, rinse and repeat. Take the classic hedge fund disaster. Managers raise billions from investors by promising market-neutral strategies and risk-adjusted alpha. Translation: they are gambling with borrowed money, but in suits. For a while it works. The fund posts insane returns. The managers are celebrated as visionaries. And journalists line up to declare them the next Warren Buffett. Then one bad trade happens. The leverage ratio flips from asset to liability. And suddenly the visionary is begging for emergency loans, while his investors wonder how their children's college funds disappeared into a black hole of derivatives. The beauty of these stories is that the script never changes. It is always the same act with different characters. First, the genius moment. I have discovered a strategy that always wins. Next, the amplification. If it works with $10, imagine what happens with 10 million borrowed ones. Finally, the punchline. Oops, it stopped working, and now I owe the bank 3 lifetimes of income. Curtain closes, audience laughs, creditors cry. But let us not pretend this only happens in the rarefied world of hedge funds and Wall Street. Ordinary investors fall for the same illusion every single day. The margin account is a gateway drug. It starts small. Why not double my Tesla bet? I mean, it can only go up, right? 2 weeks later, you are Googling how to declare bankruptcy while Elon Musk tweets memes about Dogecoin. That is the genius of leverage. It gives you the thrill of gambling without the dignity of free drinks at the casino. One of the cruelest jokes about leverage is how quickly it flips your status. On Monday, you are a financial prodigy, bragging to your friends about your 300% returns. On Wednesday, you are liquidated, broke, and explaining to your spouse why you had to sell the family car. Leverage does not just erase wealth. It erases reputations, marriages, and self-esteem. It is the ultimate equalizer, turning paper millionaires into real-world cautionary tales faster than you can say margin call. The psychological trap is obvious, but still irresistible. Success makes you greedy. Greed makes you reckless. Recklessness invites leverage. Leverage makes you broke. And then, like clockwork, You start telling people that you learned valuable lessons and that next time you will be more careful. Spoiler, you will not. Because if you were actually careful, you would never have touched leverage in the first place. What makes these stories so entertaining is the sheer hubris involved. Nobody ever leverages because they think they might fail. They leverage because they think they are infallible. When the inevitable happens, the meltdown is spectacular. There is nothing more satisfying than watching someone who claimed to have outsmarted the market get humbled by the simple math of borrowed money. The lesson, of course, is painfully boring. Leverage is not a shortcut to wealth. It is a shortcut to bankruptcy court. The people who actually stay rich avoid it like the plague. They let time, patience, and compounding do the heavy lifting while everyone else burns themselves alive trying to be clever. But boring never goes viral, and hubris is always more exciting than discipline. So the cautionary tales keep piling up, one after another, each one convinced that this time, leverage will behave like a loyal dog instead of a rabid wolf. Here is the bitter punchline. Leverage does not care who you are, does not care how smart you think you are, how many charts you have studied, or how many followers you have on Twitter. Leverage is an unforgiving master. You either respect it by staying far away, or it will turn you into the next tragicomic story. In the endless saga of geniuses who went broke faster than anyone thought possible, so if you ever feel tempted to juice your portfolio with borrowed money, remember this. You might be the protagonist today, but history has already written your ending. It is not champagne and yachts. It is bankruptcy and regret. And everyone watching will enjoy the show more than you.
Because who needs breaks? Watching investors drive their portfolios straight off a cliff.
The financial world is full of daredevils, not the cool kind who jump motorcycles through flaming hoops, but the sad kind who believe borrowing 10 times their net worth to bet on stocks makes them visionaries. These people look at a cliff and say, yes, but what if I floor it? They call it using leverage. I call it financial suicide with a Bloomberg terminal. The psychology behind this madness is simple. Nobody likes slow wealth. Patience is boring, discipline is dull, and compounding feels like watching grass grow in slow motion. So instead of building wealth like a responsible adult, investors slam the gas pedal with leverage, convinced they will break in time. Spoiler, they never do. They always discover that the brakes are missing, the steering wheel is loose, and the road ends much sooner than they thought. The cliff metaphor is almost too perfect. You start driving faster than everyone else, and at first it feels amazing. Other investors crawl along in their minivans of diversification, sipping coffee, listening to podcasts about long-term investing. Meanwhile, you are blasting down the highway in a Ferrari of leverage, watching your portfolio rocket higher with every borrowed dollar. The thrill is intoxicating. You think, why would anyone ever drive slow? But then that is exactly when the cliff appears on the horizon. The cliff takes many forms. It could be an unexpected interest rate hike, a minor earnings miss, or a random tweet from some billionaire who enjoys manipulating markets between rocket launches. Suddenly, your leveraged position swings against you, and the Ferrari is airborne. You are no longer an investor. You are a passenger in a gravity experiment. The ground is rushing up to greet you, and all the confidence in the world cannot build a parachute. What makes this spectacle so hilarious is the arrogance of the drivers. They always believe they can swerve before disaster strikes and will exit before the downturn. That is the famous last word of every over-leveraged investor. But the market does not text you before it crashes. It does not give you a polite 2-week notice. It slams on the brakes without warning, and you are still flooring it, humming along. It's convinced that gravity does not apply to geniuses like you. The margin call is the financial equivalent of hitting the canyon floor. One moment you are bragging on social media about your 400% returns. The next, your broker is liquidating your positions faster than you can Google how to recover from financial ruin. The silence that follows is deafening. Nobody posts screenshots of their accounts after the crash. Nobody brags about their wealth-building strategy when the strategy is turned into a crater. And yet people never learn. The cliff is littered with wreckage stories of funds, traders, and retail dreamers who all believed they were special. Long-term capital management thought Nobel Prize winners could defy probability with leverage. Spoiler, they could not. Archegos Capital believed massive borrowed bets on media stocks would only go up. Spoiler, they did not. Individual investors think doubling down on Tesla or crypto with margin is bold. Spoiler, it is idiotic. The cliff claims them all. Why do people keep doing it? Because the ride feels so good before the crash. That is the cruel genius of leverage. Front-loads the pleasure and back-loads the pain. You get the illusion of being a financial superstar right up until the point you are bankrupt. It is like eating dessert first and realizing later that the main course is a fist fight with a tax collector. Meanwhile, the boring minivan drivers keep cruising. They watch the Ferraris roar past, chuckle, and wave when the inevitable smoke plume rises from the canyon below. They do not need the thrill because they understand that survival is the real game. Investing is not about speed. It is about staying on the road long enough to reach the destination. But try telling that to someone intoxicated by leverage. You might as well tell a drunk driver to slow down because there is a stop sign ahead. Here is the bitter comedy. Leverage is always marketed as a tool for the sophisticated investor. Banks and brokers love to dress it up in jargon like enhanced returns and capital efficiency. But when reality hits, these sophisticated investors look exactly like gamblers at a slot machine, pulling the lever until their pockets are empty. The only real sophistication is how quickly they can destroy wealth that took years to build. The moral of the story is, as unglamorous as it is obvious, breaks matter. Speed without control is not genius, it is stupidity. Every crash you see on the financial highway is not an accident. It is the inevitable outcome of treating leverage like a magic trick instead of a weapon. If you play with it long enough, it will blow up in your face. So the next time you see someone bragging about their leveraged gains, do not be impressed. Picture them behind the wheel of a Ferrari, blindfolded, screaming about how fast they are going. It looks exciting for about 10 seconds. Then comes the cliff. And trust me, the landing is never soft.
The myth of smart money. Spoiler alert, it was just dumb money with a megaphone.
Follow the smart money. That is the sacred commandment preached on every financial forum, CNBC panel, and TikTok guru channel. The idea is simple. The rich and powerful know something you do not. They have secret information, insider access, mystical foresight. If you simply copy their moves, you too will become wealthy. Sounds brilliant, right? Except there is one tiny problem. The so-called smart money is often just dumb money with better suits, louder microphones, and larger disasters. Let us start with hedge funds, those temples of supposed financial brilliance. They charge 2% management fees and 20% performance fees for the privilege of losing your money in ways you could have managed for free on Robinhood. These funds call themselves sophisticated investors. They talk about arbitrage opportunities, liquidity mismatches, and alpha generation. Translation: they are gambling with borrowed money, lighting it on fire, and then publishing a 100-page report explaining why it is actually your fault. Remember Archegos Capital, the family office that managed to blow up $20 billion in a single week by over-leveraging media stocks? That was smart money. Remember long-term capital management, the hedge fund run by actual Nobel Prize winners who thought math could outsmart reality until they required a $3.6 billion bailout. That was smart money too. Nothing screams intelligence quite like vaporizing billions and nearly taking down the global financial system. The problem is not that smart money makes mistakes. Everyone makes mistakes. The problem is that smart money makes the same dumb mistakes as retail traders, only on a much larger scale. Retail investors panic by meme stocks because Reddit told them to. Hedge funds panic by undervalued assets because their algorithm told them to. Both end up crying in their spreadsheets. The only difference is that hedge fund managers get invited back on television to explain why they were early instead of just wrong. And speaking of television, let us not forget the parade of smart money experts who grace the financial media with their infinite wisdom. These people cannot predict whether it will rain tomorrow, but they will happily tell you where the S&P 500 will be in 12 months. They sit in studios with expensive lighting, spout jargon like macro headwinds and sector rotation, and somehow convince millions of viewers that they are prophets. In reality, they are just highly paid coin flippers with very good hair. The funniest part is how everyone worships these people even after they fail spectacularly. A hedge fund blows up? Well, nobody could have predicted that. An analyst's price target is off by 50%. The market changed unexpectedly. A billionaire tweets a prediction that age is worse than milk. He is still a visionary, apparently. The only qualification needed to be considered smart money is the ability to sound confident while being consistently wrong. But let us not kid ourselves. Retail investors adore the myth of smart money because it gives them someone to follow. It is easier to believe in financial shepherds than to accept the brutal truth. Nobody knows anything. If you admit that the market is chaos wrapped in probabilities, if you also admit that your dreams of quick riches are just that, dreams. Much easier to pretend that somewhere someone has cracked the code, and all you need to do is copy them. Fortunately, copying the so-called smart money usually means buying at the top. By the time you read about a billionaire's brilliant trade in the news, he has already sold his position and is laughing at you from his yacht. You are the exit liquidity. You are the late guest at the buffet, arriving after the lobster is gone and only the wilted salad remains. That is not investing. That is financial cosplay. Here's the real punchline. The actual smart money, the truly successful investors, are invisible. They are not screaming on television. They are not publishing daily newsletters with capitalized headlines. They are not making viral TikToks with flashing charts. They are quietly buying broad index funds, sitting on their hands, and letting time and compounding do the work. You will never hear from them because they are too busy being wealthy to care about your attention. Meanwhile, the loudest voices, the supposed insiders, the ones claiming to have special insight into the mysteries of the market, they are the dumb money with megaphones. Their job is not to make you rich. Their job is to keep you trading, panicking, and handing over fees. And they are very, very good at it. So the next time you hear the phrase, follow the smart money, do yourself a favor, laugh. Because if the smart money were truly that smart, they would not be wasting their time telling you what to do. They would be on an island somewhere, unreachable, sipping cocktails and ignoring the noise. The fact that they are still talking means they want something from you. And spoiler, it is not your success. The myth of smart money exists because people are desperate to believe in it. But here is the bitter reality. The market does not care how smart anyone is. It humbles everyone eventually. The loudest geniuses, the boldest hedge funds, the most overconfident billionaires, they all end up proving the same point. Smart money is just dumb money with a press release.
Margin calls and meltdowns. The exclusive club nobody wants to join, but everyone thinks they deserve.
There is a special kind of phone call that every overconfident investor dreads. It does not come from friends, family, or even debt collectors. It comes from your broker, and it begins with the two ugliest words in finance: margin call. This is not a friendly check-in. This is your portfolio being repossessed in real time. Think of it as the repo man for your financial ego. Margin calls are the financial equivalent of being asked to leave a fancy party because you cannot pay for the champagne you already drink. You strutted in like a king, ordered bottles for the whole table, and now the waiter has returned with the bill. Suddenly you are not a high roller, you are the broke fool fumbling for change while security waits to escort you outside. What makes margin calls so tragic is how preventable they are. Nobody wakes up one morning shocked to discover they used leverage. No, they chose it. They begged for it. They believed they were too smart to ever be caught in a downturn. And yet when the market sneezes, they are the ones catching pneumonia. Every single meltdown begins with the same delusion. It will not happen to me. And then it does spectacularly. The ritual unfolds with perfect precision. Step 1. The investor leverages up, convinced their latest trade is bulletproof. Step 2. The market dips slightly, just enough to make the leveraged position wobble. Step 3. The broker calls, politely demanding that the investor add more cash to cover their losses. Step 4. The investor realizes that they do not have more cash. Step 5. Liquidation. The positions are sold at the worst possible moment, locking in losses so brutal they make bankruptcy lawyers salivate. Curtain closes, audience applauds. Hedge funds have provided some of the most delicious examples. Archegos Capital became a household name, not because of its genius, but because it detonated in public view. Margin calls rained down from every bank at once, and the firm went from billions to rubble in days. It was like watching a demolition in slow motion, except instead of buildings collapsing, It was reputations, investor confidence, and a few very expensive yachts. But let us not pretend margin calls only haunt billion-dollar funds. Retail investors face them too, usually after making bold moves in their Robinhood accounts. These are the folks who mistake borrowed money for free money. They post screenshots online of their unstoppable gains, then go radio silent the moment the broker yanks the rug. One day they are financial gurus. The next, they are selling their PlayStation to cover rent. Margin calls are cruel not only because they drain your account, but because they expose you. They prove beyond any doubt that you are not the mastermind you thought you were. They strip away the illusion of control and leave you naked in the storm of market volatility. And the best part? Nobody ever sympathizes. When you blow up on leverage, people do not pity you, they laugh. Because you knew the risks, ignored them, and still believed you were special. Spoiler, you were not. The meltdowns that follow are pure theater. Investors cry about unfair markets and manipulation as if gravity were conspiring against them. They complain that they were this close to making a fortune, if only the market had held out a little longer. It is the same excuse every gambler makes after losing rent money at the roulette wheel. I almost had it. Nobody cares. The house always wins. And in finance, the house is your broker. And do not forget the ripple effect. One person's meltdown becomes another person's headline. News anchors gleefully shout about billions evaporating, while social media explodes with memes mocking the collapse. The victim becomes the punchline, immortalized not for their intelligence, but for their hubris. That is the true legacy of margin calls. They turn financial geniuses into comedic relief. Here is the irony. Avoiding margin calls is embarrassingly simple. Do not borrow money to gamble in the market. That is it. That is the entire secret. But simplicity is boring, and boredom does not sell courses, newsletters, or financial entertainment. So the cycle continues. Leverage, margin call, meltdown, repeat. Each new victim believes they are too clever for gravity, and each one ends up splattered on the same pavement. The exclusive club of margin call survivors grows larger every year. Its members do not brag about their initiation. They do not frame the liquidation notice and hang it in their office. They suffer in silence, humiliated by their own arrogance. And yet, there is always a new wave of hopefuls lining up at the door, convinced they are destined for greatness. The bouncer at this club is merciless, and admission is always paid in tears and bankruptcy filings. So the next time someone tells you they are leveraging up for maximum gains, picture them standing at the edge of a cliff, handing their parachute to a stranger, and insisting they can fly without it. You do not need to wonder how the story ends. You already know. The margin call is inevitable. The meltdown is guaranteed. And the rest of us will be watching from the sidelines, popcorn in hand, enjoying the spectacle.
Leverage promises champagne, delivers hangovers, and sends the bill to your future self.
Leverage has the charm of a con artist. Shows up at your door wearing a tuxedo, holding a bottle of Dom, and whispering sweet promises of easy wealth. Come with me, it says, and you will skip the boring grind of patience and compounding. You will drink champagne while everyone else is sipping tap water. And you believe it because who does not want to feel rich today instead of 10 years from now? But what leverage does not mention is that tomorrow morning, you will wake up with a financial hangover so bad that aspirin will not fix it. The trick is that leverage never shows you the whole story. It sells the glamorous part, the multiplying returns, the instant status, the adrenaline rush of turning a small stake into a big fortune. What it hides is the fine print. The losses are multiplied too. The risks grow exponentially. And the person stuck paying for this little party is your future self. By the time you realize it, you are broke, nauseous, and wondering why you ever thought doubling down with borrowed money was a brilliant idea. Think about the absurdity for a second. You borrow money to gamble in a system that already eats most people alive without leverage. It is like deciding Russian roulette is not exciting enough, so you add 3 more bullets to the revolver. But investors fall for it every time because leverage makes them feel sophisticated. Look at me, they say. I am not just investing, I am leveraging my capital for enhanced returns. Translation: I am betting money I do not have on outcomes I cannot control. That is not sophistication, that is financial cosplay. The champagne phase of leverage is intoxicating. You make a few lucky trades, your portfolio shoots up like a rocket. Suddenly you are convinced you are a financial prodigy. You tell your friends you have cracked the code, you post screenshots online, and you start fantasizing about yachts. It feels incredible. That is the bait. But then comes the hangover. The market wobbles, your leveraged positions implode, and the broker comes knocking with a margin call. Suddenly, the yacht fantasy is replaced with the harsh reality of selling your car to cover losses. And here's the real cruelty. Even if you survive the first hangover, leverage keeps you hooked, convinces you that next time will be different, that you just got unlucky. You almost had it, leverage whispers, like a toxic ex who knows exactly how to pull you back in. And just like that, you are placing bigger bets, taking bigger risks, and setting yourself up for an even bigger crash. The cycle is endless. Champagne, hangover, regret, repeat. The worst part is that leverage does not just hurt you in the present, it steals from your future. Every dollar you lose today is a dollar that could have been compounding quietly for years. Instead, you hand it over to the market casino, and your future self gets stuck with the bill. 10 years later, while disciplined investors are enjoying their boring but real wealth, you are explaining to your kids why their college fund evaporated in a haze of enhanced returns. Congratulations, you have not only destroyed your present, you have sabotaged your future too. History is filled with cautionary tales of leverage hangovers. Entire banks, hedge funds, and nations have fallen victim to it. The Great Depression, amplified by margin debt. The 2008 financial crisis, a leverage party where the hangover nearly took down the global economy. Archegos Capital, a $20 billion implosion that made family office sound like a punchline. The pattern never changes because human greed never changes. Everyone thinks they can handle the champagne, but nobody remembers the hangover, and yet the illusion of glamour persists. Brokers market leverage as if it were a luxury product. Margin lending unlocks your potential, they say. It sounds like a champagne commercial, but the reality is closer to a cheap hangover in a gas station parking lot. They know exactly how this ends, but they also know you cannot resist the temptation. Your greed is their business model, and your regret is their revenue. The truth apart, nobody wants to admit is that leverage is unnecessary. You do not need it to build wealth. In fact, the people who actually succeed in the long run avoid it entirely. They stick to the boring basics. Save, diversify, invest consistently, and let compounding work its slow magic. It is dull, yes. Nobody will call you a genius for buying index funds. But you will sleep at night, your future self will thank you, and you will never know the sting of a margin call hangover. So here is the punchline. Leverage does not make you rich. It makes you reckless. It promises champagne, delivers hangovers, and ensures that the only person laughing in the end is your broker. If you want wealth, forget the tuxedo, the champagne, and the shortcuts. Pick the boring path. It may not sparkle, but at least it will not leave your future self broke and hungover, wondering how it all went wrong.
The cult of leverage. Pray hard, pay harder.
So here we are. After 5 cautionary tales that should have been enough to scare you straight, will you actually learn? Probably not. Because deep down, you still believe you are different. You think you are the exception, the chosen one. The genius who can outsmart centuries of mathematics and human stupidity. You will take the champagne, thank leverage for the invitation, and tell yourself the hangover will never come, but it will. And when it does, the market will not send flowers. It will send a margin call. It will strip you of your money, your pride, and maybe even your sanity. Meanwhile, the boring investors, the ones you mocked for being slow-will, quietly compound their wealth and laugh at your misfortune. That is the final punchline. Leverage does not just rob you, it makes you the entertainment. The real question is not whether leverage will burn you. The real question is how loudly the rest of us will laugh when it does.